Hello, I'm just gathering up this topsoil from these molehills. It's wonderful topsoil. A lot of people, especially farmers, complain about moles because they can throw up stones which do damage to farm equipment, but I love them. I think I've got about 4 living in my lawn, and they provide me with this wonderful topsoil, which I have a cunning plan for, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. This planter is from inside the house. If you follow my channel, you remember it. I planted it up in January. It had some tiny daffodils and some tiny hyacinths. The daffodils were tete-a-tete, and I think they call the hyacinths muscari. Anyway, it was beautiful. I'll drop some footage in of how it looked when it was at its best, but as you can see now, it's gone over. Now, the daffodils I have been deadheading, but I've left the foliage on. The muscari, I am now going to remove the spent flowers, and the reason I'm doing that is I don't want it putting any energy into making seeds, so they can all come off. Now this, I think the plants I bought for this, you got 3 for £6, and I bought 6, so I think I spent £12 on the plants that are in here. I have already had £12 worth of value out of it. It sat on my kitchen window ledge through the darkest part of the winter going into spring, and gave me hope and made me look forward to the year ahead. But I want to try and get even more value out of these, because there's absolutely no reason why I shouldn't be able to recycle these bulbs and plant them in the garden, and next spring, when I planted this up with some fresh ones, I can enjoy these popping up out of the ground and giving me some colour in the garden. And that's what I'm going to do in this video now. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to leave the foliage on. I'm hopeful that when I get these planted in the ground, that foliage will continue to photosynthesize and feed the plants, the bulbs, and the bulbs will regenerate themselves and store up energy and carbohydrates for the winter, so that next spring they can come back and flower again, and that cycle will be repeated. There are some things I will do when I plant these out, but for now I'm going to get them out of this planter and have a look at the roots. Now, the top of this planter I dressed with moss, and I'm going to pull that off first because I am going to reuse that. It's pointless throwing that away, it's good moss. I've got a cunning plan for this planter involving some phalaenopsis, some moth orchids, and my dining room table, and I will tell you about that at the end, and I will put a link to that video in the description box below this one. Right, so I should just remove this moss so that we can use it again. And as I do this, I'm also hopefully trying to untangle these leaves so that we can see the 6 distinct little plants in here. I have been watering these in the kitchen, despite the fact that they no longer had flowers on, so they are still viable plants, and they should be quite well hydrated at this point in time. Right, so there we go. That's looking a bit more organised. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each of these little plants is made up of several bulbs, so I'm going to try and see if I can separate them when I replant them. Now, when I planted these, they were in tiny little pots, but I have no doubt that they will have put out a lot of roots and grown together. So the next challenge is to be getting these out of here without doing too much damage, hopefully, to the roots. I'm not concerned too much about a bit of damage, because that might just stimulate them to produce more roots underneath when I get them planted up. So how can we get these out without damaging them? Let's just try and take one out first. I can hear the roots tearing as I do that. There's the original little root ball, and there's all the new root growth, but it's come out. Isn't that lovely? Let's do the same for the others. Now, once I got one out, it freed up space to get the other out in slightly more intact. Look at that lovely growth there on the roots. Isn't that wonderful? Right, and here's another. Again, lovely roots there. Beautiful. I'll try and tease a little bit of this spent compost off. There won't be much goodness left in that now. They've produced all this growth. so it will have had most of the nutrients sucked out of it. I have to say, it feels good doing this, knowing that I'm going to get more value out of these bulbs than I originally thought. Whilst we're here, I just want to show you something in this planter. So I wanted drainage under these, so if I just remove that compost, which I'll tidy up later, I can show you that in the bottom of here is a bit of old bin liner. Full of gravel. If you want to see the original video when I planted these up, I'll put the link below. That planter is going back in the house and is going to be used for some Phalaenopsis moth orchids. And again, there'll be a video on that. Again, it will be linked in the description box below this one. Now let's have a look at these and see if we can tease them apart. And this is one of the daffodils, and you can see there's 3 bulbs there. Let's see if we can gently persuade them to separate without doing too much damage. So if I tear that like that, there's a bulb with some roots and some foliage. And there are 2 more. So it does seem to be working with the daffodils. What about these muscari, little hyacinths? Slightly more packed together. Well, it's working. I have to say, I can feel these roots breaking. You can feel them getting damaged. Hopefully, because we're still in March, there will be enough growing season left for these to establish again and put more roots. I'm going to show you me planting these in a moment. There's some things I very definitely want to do when I plant these to give them a bit more space. Interesting point there. Look at that one there. It's already got a little tiny bulblet. I hope you can see that on camera. That's the leaf that was growing out of it. Isn't that cute? Sadly, that is going to get lost. But that's probably how they propagate. They produce little tiny pups. Right, there we go. Some muscari bulbs. Wonderful. Happy with that. That's good news. I'll see you again in a moment when I've separated them all and we go and plant them. I now have 9 daffodil bulbs and 22 muscari bulbs, little hyacinths. Right, let me talk to you next about how I'm going to plant these up and some of the precautions I'm going to take to ensure these get through the winter. Now there's a lovely spot just here with bare earth, and there are already some daffodils here, so I know they'll do well here. So I'm now going to dig a hole deep enough for those bulbs. How deep does a hole for bulbs need to be? When I bought those, they were planted on the surface. You could see most of the bulb, but that's not normally how you plant bulbs in the earth. You normally plant bulbs 3 or 4 times the depth of the bulb for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's under the ground, so it's protected from most of the frost, and also it probably prevents things like rodents and squirrels from getting to them and digging them up. But because they're going to go through a cold, wet winter, you don't want them to rot. So I'm going to dig this hole deep enough to put some gravel in the bottom so that the bulbs can sit on the gravel so that any excess water can drain away from them in the winter time. Right, let's get a hole dug. So there we've got a nice hole there, quite a nice deep trench. As I said before, let me show you a bulb, and it wants to be 3 or 4 times the depth of the bulb. So you can see I've gone quite deep. I'm actually going to put some gravel in the bottom of here. You're going to see me put gravel in. Ideally, it would be horticultural grit. I don't have any today. I've only got gravel, so I'll be using gravel. It does the same thing. It just enhances the drainage at the bottom. If you want to buy a bag of horticultural grit, I will put a link to one in the description box below this video. If you buy it, I do get commission, and your support is greatly appreciated. Right, the next thing will be to plant these. I'm going to plant them in an orderly fashion, but first of all, let's just get some gravel in the bottom of this trench. I actually bought this gravel for some drainage work I'm doing in the garden, but I'm finding I'm using it for a lot of gardening projects as well. As I mentioned, horticultural grit will be better. This is a little tiny bit coarse, but don't worry, it'll soon do the same job. In it goes. I'll just level that down. That will provide great drainage underneath these bulbs and stop them from rotting. I've mentioned that I'm going to plant these in an orderly fashion. Let me explain what I mean. I can see this area from my kitchen window. Daffodils are taller than hyacinths, so I'm going to put the daffodils at the back and the hyacinths at the front, but I am going to blend them. And next spring, it will look quite artificial. It will look too ordered and too structured. But the year after, when they've multiplied a bit, it'll sort itself out. So here's a daffodil, which I'm going to lie across the back of there, like that. Can you see? And I'm going to do the same with the other daffodils. I'm retaining the foliage because I want them to keep photosynthesizing. By the winter time, that will have all died back, of course. I'm going around the outside of this trench because I'm going to put soil against them in a moment and put some down the middle, but I want the whole bulb to have contact to soil all the way around it so that it can continue. This is a hyacinth. This can go down the front, as can that one, and so on. So you'll see me now put these in with space between them, about 3 or 4 bulbs depth, and the foliage emerging from the soil so that it can still carry on taking in light and photosynthesizing. Even if I don't get 100% success rate with these, I'll be happy because I've already had my value out of these. And there, hopefully, you can see a ring of bulbs, hyacinths on this side, the shorter ones, daffodils around the back, and I've retained some daffodils and some hyacinths to go up the centre. The next thing I'm going to do is put soil around the edge, which will basically start the planting in process. So these ones around the edge of this hole will be planted in first, then we'll add the others. This is that lovely molehill soil. And now I hope that you can see that those are planted all the way around the edge there, individually, with contact with the soil for every individual bulb. And these will be planted down the centre. I'm actually going to fill this a bit more with more soil and then plant these into it using my fingers, because I can do that now. I've got those in around the edge. So now in we go with the others. Again, 2 or 3 times the depth of the bulb, and then it goes pretty randomly actually. That one's got a little nodule on the side, that will produce 2 actually, I think. And it goes 2 fingers and down. Now the one thing I will do with this is I will give it a really good soaking, and I'll keep on top of that. I don't want these to dry out too much during the summertime when they're still photosynthesizing, because if they're photosynthesizing, I presume that means that they are putting energy back into the bulbs for the winter, and I hopefully will enjoy these for years and years to come. Will it work? Of course it will work. You try and stop Mother Nature. It's a powerful force. Hope you've enjoyed that. I'll see you soon for some more bulb recycling adventures. Bye for now.